I've been lucky to pick up some Baggles as well as Legend Seed Mock minifigures on the aftermarket, looking at Cal and the Witchers specifically. My Ahsoka here by Baggles was the only figure from Baggles so far that I've gotten in a reasonable amount of time. Speaking of which, finally got one of my pre-orders from them, being Kit Fisto here, which I'm very excited about. One of my favorite Star Wars characters, and of course something that LEGO has not made in a super long amount of time, with the original one here that I have. It's not from the set, it was a keychain at one point, but very excited to take a look at how those compare, and hopefully I'll have an upgrade. The case here is going to be a solid plastic case, which is typical for Legend Seed Mock minifigures, as well as being the same packaging that Ling uses for their characters. On the inside, you have a piece of paper that gives you a warning, just telling you to be careful with the minifigure. Doesn't look like anything specific on here about this figure, but just gives you a general warning. On the inside, you have the foam cutout, which is not, again, not specific for the minifigure. Looks like for expansion type characters, there's another option to pop those out and put more pieces in, but you'll just have the minifigure with one of the heads on in the one side, another one over here with the second head, lightsaber also present. A little hard to get these out while I'm doing it on camera. And you can see right back there is a card for the minifigure as well. A little bit of surface tension there, holding it down with some friction. But the copyright-free name, Charming Knight, with some silver. Not like a crazy amount of printing. Legend Seed Mock on the bottom there. And more Legend Seed Mock on the back with the website. Starting with the official minifigure first, just to get that out of the way. This is obviously more movie-based. It's not an exact level of detail to what the minifigure should look like either. Face is a little bit cartoony, has a nose which is a little bit uncanny for a lot of these Lego minifigures where that's not really something they do. On top of that, this is also going to be a rubber headpiece, so color match is going to be a little off. I'd say this is a pretty good case where they do match the Lego plastic pretty well, but it is also going to be very susceptible to having the print rub off. I feel like looking at pictures, mine is actually not awful, really just the braided sort of like brown pieces have had the printing come off the face. The black is a little bit faded, but not super awful. But that's just going to be the case with like these kids' toys if you're playing with them. When you get them as a kid, you're going to end up damaging them if they're in a bin of some sort or anything like that. And again, robes are going to be brown here, I feel like. For the movie, probably a little bit closer, but I think the version that Baggles went with, the dark tan, is going to be a little bit better. But let's check out that custom version now. We'll just start with the head that was on the figure out of the container. Give you that neutral look with the dark red eyes. I think that looks kind of cool. This is going to definitely be more Clone Wars based, obviously with the shoulder armor pads and all that, but also just, of course, with the facial design. Sometimes they'll have a more realistic version of their faces. For some characters like Ahsoka, where they'll do a Clone Wars and more human-looking one. Not going to be the case here, unfortunately, but am liking what I'm seeing here. Best part about this is that the head is actually going to be a hard plastic instead of rubber. One downside of that really is that the head will not be able to turn at all, so you're not going to be able to pose this pretty much, other than just the straight on. Which is going to be fine if you're just displaying it in a case, which I feel like most people are, but it could be limiting for photography unless you do some Photoshop work to somehow make the tentacles in the front move in some way. Probably wouldn't be impossible to do. Just cover them up in the photo and then do some perspective warping. But right off the bat, some very cool detailing on the arms. You can see that there's the wraparound white printing for the shoulder pads that I already kind of mentioned. Printing on the hand for not only the armor piece there, but also fingertips, and that will be mirrored on the other side as well. But on this shoulder pad, arm band sort of thing, you can see that there is no extra printing. This one has the communicator, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right from the show. So a little bit of extra detailing on his right arm. So nice to see that included. On top of wraparound arm printing. Looks like there is a little bit of printing on the inside of the legs too, not a whole ton compared to the outsides where they have that additional buckle printing, not going to be on the inside, which is too bad, I guess. That buckle detailing just kind of disappears at that point since it would be kind of implied to be on the top of the toe there, and then goes nowhere on the other side, but I don't mind that if it's going to keep the price down a little bit. As long as the detailing on the outside is consistent, that's perfect for me for the legs. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be printed on, yep, dark tan. So the brown printing is what is printed on. And it's nice to see a little bit of dark brown and normal reddish brown. I feel like those colors are consistent too on the green. So good to see them printing that on different colors and it is matching. Lego has an issue with that sometimes where the color match just isn't always the best. Custom hilt here. You have a little bit of black printing on the bottom of the hilt and on the top where the lightsaber comes out. Does use an official blade piece, which is pretty tight in there, at least when I first took it out of the container, so I probably wouldn't want to mess with this too much. You can see right here I'm struggling to get it out again, but I noticed if I can get it out. Ooh, definitely, again, be careful with that. I'm assuming this is molded in that silver, so you don't have to worry about it chipping, but I wouldn't be so sure. But this lightsaber piece is like cut at the bottom there, I'm assuming, to account for the depth of the hilt here. But interesting to see them modify the official piece like that. I'm not 100% sure why they would have done that, but I want to make sure I'm pointing that out. Again, the top of the hilt is going to be super thin, so try not to take the blade out and put it back in if you don't have to. That would probably be a part that would be nice to receive an extra of just in case it gets damaged. Of course, in this case where there's the extra black printing, that would be a little bit more expensive, but hopefully, that's something that they could do for other minifigures where it is just the silver. But it is nice to see it molded, I'm pretty sure, and the shine looks nice. I would say it is pretty comparable to the silver that is pretty standard for official lightsaber hilts these days. So good to see some consistency there. Not super undersized or oversized, so I think the scaling's pretty good. It's kind of funny that there's a little bit of black printing at the top of the sleeves too, which probably could have been left off, I guess. Not 100% sure what that is supposed to represent, especially since he doesn't have like armor up there, it doesn't look like. But yeah, I think the head looks great with the little bit of extra molded tentacles in the back. And I believe features just as many or more tentacles than the official one. From what I'm seeing, I think it is yeah, it does have more because there are 3 in the side groupings there, and I think there are only 2. So more detailed than the official one, which you would expect for a custom version. And the brown on those 2 look pretty good. The only little bit of sloppiness, I'm noticing a little bit of extra brown at the top of that ponytail, whatever you want to call those parts that you would have on him. And there's an issue with this minifigure I just want to point out, just to bring up. I didn't have the issue, but some of the heads that got shipped out didn't have the gill printing on the sides of the heads. But Legacy Mock and Baggles caught that and were able to send out replacements with the correct printing. So good on them for being able to do that. And glad I didn't end up having one of the misprinted minifigures. But I think facial expression 1 is pretty good here and probably the one that I will be displaying in my case. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get the head off to look at the rest of the torso and switch out the face. And again, it is a hard plastic part, so you're going to want to be a little bit careful as you are taking it off the torso, just small movements not to damage any print. Honestly, it's not super hard to get off, it's just being patient with it, and that is what the inside of the head looks like, where it does look like it has like a normal minifigure neck on the front there, which is fun, and then just molded tentacles on the inside. And it is nice to see that they still printed it brown on the inside, even though it's covered the whole time you have it on. Back to just the torso. There is that white at the top there, which continues slightly onto the back, which I believe is part of like the Jedi armor bit, or it could just be an undershirt, not 100% sure, because there's a little bit of like a white collar print that's implied with some brown at the top there too. It's interesting to see the black printing there is a little bit shaved off. Not sure if that is something that they did on purpose or just a combination of putting the head on and rubbing off, but pointing it out as I'm seeing it. Back, really just some wrinkles and the belt print, which continues around to the front. Looks like there's a little bit of brown printing to make it look a little bit thinner or tighter on him. And I guess I was under the conception that Legacy mock minifigures usually have like side torso printing as well, but I guess not in this case. And maybe I'm just wrong about that. So interesting to see that. The last couple figures I've looked at that don't have it, thought that was in like most of their figures, but whatever. And then again, with that wraparound arm printing, there's a little bit of black wrapping all the way around too as a color border to kind of show the difference between the armor and the sleeve. So that's nice to see. Same with the fingertips there. Those are always nice. And these are actually custom hands, since normal Lego hands don't let printing adhere to them. So that's just always something I want to point out too to people that might not know that. But super consistent printing overall. And it's kind of nice. This is just like a generic Jedi robe, where if you really wanted to, you could throw on any random minifigure head and swap out the hands, and you could just throw this in your display as a different character if you wanted to. And just to show it off quick, well, you don't have a head on there. This is what the official one looks like on there. My neck's a little bit stretched because, like I said, it was a keychain one, so I put that on there to hold the head on a little bit better. But it's a goofy looking head. Doesn't look great anymore. I know with the Plo Koon set coming out in the next couple of weeks, it would be great to get a Kit Fisto released again with a hard plastic head, just because this one hasn't aged super well. But again, just wanted to show this off while we're here, just so you have an idea of that. And let's throw on the other expression from the custom figure. And it's nice to see that they actually did change up the printing quite a bit on this version of the head. The upper eyebrow there is a different shape. Eyes are a little bit wider, obviously a different mouth. The side sort of cheekbone curves are the same though. And I noticed that this head seems to be a little bit easier to take off and put back on while I was playing around with that. So that's good to see too. Lots of love about this minifigure. I'm loving all the colors and all the prints on here. Not a lot to complain about, honestly. Before we go though, I just want to go over some articulation just so you can see that. Legs are going to be able to kick back all the way without bumping into the tentacles. Legs are able to kick up all the way, but they will bump into the bottom there, so be a little bit careful. But it does seem like there is enough clearance for that. Arms, bending the arm back, it's going to bump into the tentacle pretty much right away, but you're going to have no issue bending to the front till you reach there, which is plenty high, I feel like, for Jedi posing with lightsabers. So I think this is a very well designed part, especially with it being on a harder plastic, which I appreciate. Definitely looks a lot better, and will just hold the print on there a lot easier and continue to keep the quality on there consistent, which is what you want for a minifigure at this price. With that being said, let's hop into some comparisons and, of course, the final verdict. I'll say this in every one of my custom LEGO Star Wars videos. I don't collect a lot of Star Wars for good reason. LEGO puts out pretty much every character you would want, and for the most part, I'm pretty happy with what they're doing. But when it comes to a character, like in this video today, Kit Fisto, who hasn't had a release in like 10 plus years, if I can get a really good version, that'll be the perfect version so I don't have to buy another one. That is perfect for me. And I've been lucky so far since I pre-ordered this like 2 or 3 years ago now. LEGO hasn't done a Kit Fisto minifigure. That's not going to be the case for the Plo Koon one that I'll be reviewing next in the Baggles line, but it's a pretty night and day difference here between the version released with the LEGO sets for Revenge of the Sith and, of course, this custom one now, which should be the case. It's a custom minifigure, it's more expensive. It should be a way better look and value and all that. But for like $4 as a keychain, this was a great version for a very long time. Unfortunately, a lot of the print has started to rub off over the years, which makes sense. And I feel like this is definitely a better representation of like the movie version where it's not that far off. I think if LEGO gave this another attempt, they could really knock it out of the park. But for a Clone Wars version, this is definitely perfect. I don't really know any way you could improve this from the Clone Wars. Looks great. I guess if you had a shirtless version too, that could be a fun variant to reuse that mold. But comparing it to my other Baggles minifigures, gonna fit in pretty well. They're not super over detailed to the point where they are not going to be able to fit in with other official or custom minifigures. I feel like that's the case here with the robe design, where it's not super over detailed or anything like that. It does have like a lot of different colors though, with the leg print and everything, but comparing it to an official LEGO robe there, it wouldn't look too far off to have these next to each other. And I wanted to make sure I compared Kit Fisto here to my favorite aquatic themed custom minifigure in my collection, being the Creature from the Black Lagoon by True Red Studios, one of my all-time favorite minifigures. And it's kind of fun to see him in sand green, which was the original color that LEGO did use for Kit Fisto but the olive used here in this custom version is definitely very nice and probably fits in a lot better with the actual design for the character. And of course, just some other custom Star Wars minifigures. Cobalt one here, which I did review very recently with an interview with Cobalt, which was very nice of him to join me for, and a very great version of Darth Vader. Cal was one of those Baggles minifigures I had to get, and I'm glad I got him for a very good deal, since it is like the first Baggles minifigure where he really blew up and everything like that, and it is pretty tough to track down, I feel like, nowadays without spending a lot of money, but glad to add another Jedi character to my collection with Kid Fisto here, and I'm excited to see what else they put out. The pre-order timelines are pretty messed up, and it sucks to wait 2 to 3 years for a figure that you buy, but the quality's great, and I'm glad that they had the customer service and quality assurance to fix the misprinted heads and took care of that very quickly. Everything about this, though, the custom molds, whether it is the head or the lightsaber hilt, both look great. All around printing has been amazing, and this is a great addition to my collection. If you want to see more custom LEGO Star Wars or custom LEGO videos overall, check out all the content on my channel. I have been Brick Radiop. I will see you in the next video.